this House do now adjourn?
The question is that this House do now adjourn. Dean Russell.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I rise today for the final adjournment debate of the year, and the topic I am discussing is buses. And I'm conscious the topic is specifically related to buses and cancellations and timetables, and I'm very conscious that I'm keeping everyone late, just like some of the buses have been causing for my constituents. But more specifically, the issues with buses in Watford and the recent change in timetables have caused serious issues for my constituents and for residents in their daily lives, in their activities to get to work, whether it be to hospital appointments, GP appointments, or just visiting friends and family. And so my request for a debate follows engagement and correspondence with my local community, including 2 bus community meetings that I held with constituents. Those were held with Arriva, who are the prominent bus service provider that I'll be talking about their buses today, but there are others, and so it's not limited just to Arriva and the issues with those. Oh yes, absolutely, I'll give way.
Thank him for bringing this extremely important and timely debate, and would he agree that bus services are perhaps even more vital in rural areas? And I think about my own constituency of Lesmahago, which has an extremely poor service, and also one of the new estates in East Kilbride, which doesn't have a regular service at all. And surely it's incumbent on us all to work together across party and across governments to make sure that people have these services which are so very vital, particularly for the most vulnerable.
I thank the Honourable Lady for her comments, and it is absolutely true in rural areas but also in urban areas. You know, bus services provide a really important role for our communities, and the role that they provide is not political. You know, you don't catch a red bus or a blue bus or a yellow bus, you catch a bus. And the reality here is that we must all work together. We must find ways to ensure that we serve our community in the best way we can. I'll gladly give way.
Congratulate the Honourable Member for Watford for bringing this. I did text him before he came in, sat down, it would be okay to get an intervention. When I seen this, I just right away thought of my constituency of Strangford, which is similar to the Honourable Gentleman's in Watford. And speaking as an active representative of a rural constituency of Strangford, I have attempted to fight many battles for those who are the victims of reduced services, often without prior warning, just cancelled them without any consultation. Does the Honourable Member not agree that the duty of care to isolated communities should demand at least some consultation? And if bus companies aren't prepared to do this voluntarily, then this place must be the place to take action legally.
I thank the Honourable Member for his comments, and to be fair, he didn't need to text me because I was hoping he would join the adjournment debate. I think it would be very odd if he didn't, and so I appreciate his comments and agree wholeheartedly. You know, the reason why I called this debate, and I'll cover this as I go through my speech further, is surely the point of a timetable is to make sure people know what time buses are coming. If that timetable changes, the very people who use the bus should be consulted and asked about how it will impact them and not just be seen as numbers on a spreadsheet. And to be honest, when I was looking at calling this debate, having spoken to local residents, I was quite surprised that there isn't a government or local government edict that says you must ask the people who get on the bus whether there's going to be a change to the timetable. I mean, that seems like a very obvious thing to do, so I wholeheartedly agree with his comments. And I should say that whether it's Arriva or whether it's the local government organisations, I've been very actively involved in engaging with them and talking to them and having correspondence with them. So none of them will be surprised at the concerns I raised today in the Chamber. And in many ways, I hope this is a constructive opportunity to say that, look, I'm not going to give up on raising these issues, but I will work with them to make sure that we resolve them in the best way we possibly can for my constituents.
Well,
oh, absolutely.
I'm very grateful for allowing me to intervene. I'm delighted that he's called this debate today. Warrington has seen investment of about £42 million in its bus services most recently, and when I post on social media and talk about those issues, the overwhelming response that I get back is that it's all very well investing in the future, but if the buses don't run, if they're cancelled, it causes significant problems. So you agree with me that there's a really fundamental need to ensure that local consultation is in place. People make decisions about where they're going to buy their houses on the bus routes and the timings for getting to work. And if that all falls down, people's lives are significantly impacted by the decisions that people might take in an office somewhere running a bus company. Isn't it fundamental that actually there is a level of consultation when things change?
I truly thank my honourable friend for his intervention, because he also allowed me to intervene on his similar debate about buses in Warrington. I recall Mr Deputy Speaker being in the chair at the time and commenting on the clear similarities between Warrington and Watford. But he is absolutely right. The reality here is that, this isn't just something that can be looked at on a spreadsheet or on a Google Maps to see where things might go. It has a detrimental impact on individuals, but also where bus routes do run, it can have a really positive impact on their opportunities to travel, whether that be for work or for leisure. And so there's three key points I would like to raise today. The first, and perhaps the common thread throughout this, which is about the timetable changes, which is the title of the debate today. Secondly, about poor service, which, as my honourable friend raised just now, is a real challenge, because when you've got a timetable that doesn't work and then the buses don't turn up, that makes it infinitely worse for local residents. And then thirdly, on poor communications. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, it's worth noting that buses are used for twice as many journeys as trains, and stop at thousands of places across the country. So often the debate when talking about transport is dominated by trains. And I remember my very first Prime Minister's question after being elected was about the trains in Watford, and thankfully they did resolve those issues at the time, but unfortunately the pandemic hit and they had to change the service again. But the reality is buses are used more, they have much more of an impact, and they very much are important within rural areas and within urban areas to get on what might be seen as shorter journeys, but journeys that actually are harder to travel if you're just walking, and especially for those who might be infirm.
Did my honourable friend give way?
Oh, let's give way.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank my good friend for allowing me to intervene. I have to say, in my area of South East London, the buses are a godsend. But more than that, the system now allows us to check when they're coming on the internet, and some of the bus stops have, times, and they are very accurate. And the more of these that happen, the more effective they will be. And I thank the local buses around my area, because they hardly ever go on strike. I don't think I can remember a strike of the buses, but the trains do, and we rely on the buses when the trains don't work.
I thank my honourable friend for his comments, and actually the point on communications and the exact point he made just now is one I was going to raise nearer the end of my speech, which is, technology now allows us to see literally where Ubers are, or taxis, or if you order online, but that isn't common across the board for buses and for that type of transport, which it makes it even harder if the timetables change and if the service isn't running on time. So I will be touching upon those points and thank him for making them. So as I understand the issues from residents when I've met them, the challenge here with timetables is that when I was chatting to local residents about the changes with timetables, I said, well, who spoke to you? What was how long did you know about these changes? And they said, well, no one got on the bus, no one left us a leaflet on the bus, no one told us. And so actually, the actual bus users are not directly engaged when timetables are changed. And by bus users, I mean the people who get on the bus every day, who rely on the buses every day, who actually should surely be asked if this is going to have an impact on them. Because at the heart of this, people are not just numbers. People have their daily lives to go to. They have the stresses of daily lives. They have finished a shift at work and need to travel home. They get up in the morning to go to a hospital appointment. All of those things have knock-on effects. And as I will mention a bit later in the speech, I've had constituents almost in tears as I talk to them, where they're saying, I can't ask my boss another time for the fact if I can get in late. I'm having to cancel GP appointments or cancel hospital appointments, or let them know that I'm going to be late, which then might mean it moves back a week or a month or longer. And so the challenge here, in my mind, is that we should not just be looking at bus timetables as a numbers game. It should not just be a quantitative review. We must ensure that there's a qualitative review where we ask people what the impact might be, what the challenges they might be facing, but also what the importance is of that route. Because even if it's a case that there might be only a few people using that bus, there might be another way of helping support them. And of course there are the sort of the new services like, I think Arriva Click, I think might be one of them, although I may have got the name wrong, where you can order those sorts of services where they turn up and go on short journeys. But ultimately, you know, how can they plan for that if they don't know what sort of journeys people might need? And I appreciate that when looking into this, the specifics, in England, bus operators are required to give a statutory notice period of 70 days for registrations, variations and cancellations in relation to community bus services, made up of 28 days of notice to the local authority and 42 days notice to the traffic commissioner. But there's no legal requirement for bus operators to inform passengers of the changes until the cancel registration has been processed. I mean, this is absurd. How on earth can it be a case that the service can be cancelled without asking people and only tell them after they've made the decision, even though other organisations in that process would have been told weeks or potentially months earlier, which just, again, seems very, very strange. And I've discussed my request that the County Council will review the cancelled service in my instance through the value for money criteria when looking at the bus services and ask if they can look at how that could be supported through their own funding. But this isn't just about the funding of the services, it's about the communications of them. And I'm aware that in Hertfordshire there's an Interlink website where people can go to see the changes, but again, it's after the fact that they've been changed. As I understand it, at the moment within Watford specifically, Arriva in this instance has reorganised their network in Hemel and Watford, and that's going to, which happened in April, which resulted in a number of routes being combined. Again, not telling the constituents and my bus users that that was happening. In terms of local specific information, so in particular the Abbots Langley to Watford services were changed so that they no longer serve the St Albans Road but via Newhouse Crescent on Woodside. This has meant a loss of access to the St Albans Road and lengthened journey times. From the April changes, Arriva abandoned the northern section of the 8th service, so that's Watford to Mount Vernon Hospital, meaning a loss of service for the Hairbreaks and the moored Crescent areas of Watford. This was replaced and funded at a lower frequency by Hertfordshire County Council Contract Route 9 to Watford Town Centre to Leavesden Park. And Leavesden Park also lost its daytime services into Watford on the 10 and 20 route, replaced by the 9 service. So these were quite major changes for people within my local constituency, within those areas, and that's one of the challenges that has come up. But if I may, I'd just like to move shortly on to poor service. One of the big issues within Watford has been the punctuality and reliability of bus services, and it's been disappointing for the past year. Now, I appreciate the Minister may raise the fact a major issue has been driver shortages, and I have some questions on that later. And I believe for these particular issues, there's about 20 drivers short, which is a large number of drivers. This has led to cancellations of buses on a regular basis and resultant overcrowding on the buses that have run. Hertfordshire County Council, from my engagement with them, have been made aware that the DVSA have contacted Arriva over their services and are working with them to look at improving punctuality and reliability, something I've written to them about, to the council about, and to Arriva, and following the community engagement. And I understand that Arriva have given back a number of contracted services to Hertfordshire County Council outside of Watford to free up some bus drivers to the west. So that will benefit my constituents. And I welcome this measure, which I understand should happen in January, and this should help the reliability of the services as it will free up, I believe, 12 drivers. Also, I appreciate Arriva recognises the issue which have caused due to the unreliable service, and that them and Hertfordshire County Council have been engaging together. I do think we need to make sure that we keep the pressure on these bus companies, the same way as many debates have happened in this chamber around train services that have caused major issues for local residents. And whilst it might not be as prominent in people's minds because it's very local often, you know, when you look at the bigger picture across the country, we've got to make sure these issues are addressed. So the next issue that, of the 3 issues I wanted to raise, which I think should be something that could be organised and fixed much sooner, which is to my honourable friend's comment about poor communications. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I've said, Sadly, I've had bus users in community meetings almost in tears because they just can't fathom how a service could be so bad that they're so reliant on to just get to work or to get home at night, or for their kids who might go to a school knowing that they're stuck in some bus stops somewhere in the dark, in poor weather, not sure whether they're going to get home on time or whether they've got to try and leave work early to try and find a way to go and reach them. It's absolutely awful, and I must say from my own personal experience, it isn't alien to me. I grew up, actually not in Watford, but in the West Midlands, and many years ago I used to work at Birmingham Airport, and I used to work all sorts of shifts, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m, 2 p.m. to 10, and often the night shift. I've even done, back in the day when I probably wouldn't be allowed now, but 24-hour shifts back in the 90s. But the reason why I say is that I've been stood at bus stops at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, or when a shift is finished early, in the dark, waiting for a bus to come and it not coming, and not knowing when the next one's going to happen, what decision you need to make about are they all being cancelled, or is it going to come, as has been the case, where it just drives past you because it's too full. When you've been a bus user, you understand this isn't just a simple issue. It's something that really affects how you feel. It affects your trust in the system in terms of the network, and so causes you to think, well, actually, should I continue using the bus? So every time there's an issue with the buses, it declines the use of the buses, which then is a reason why buses aren't popular and why routes then get changed. And again, that's my point about not making this an isolated just data point, but actually about the people involved. And I think to that point, as I stated earlier, in the modern era, via apps, via technology, via websites, via screens on bus stops, you can now get much better information via GPS of where vehicles are. We see it all the time with taxis nowadays, that you can physically see where that's going to be. So the problem is that if you're in a stop and you know that there isn't going to be a bus for an hour, at least you then know that you need to plan around it. But being stood there minute after minute, is it going to come? What's going to happen is a massive issue. And I think there's a really good opportunity right now for the bus companies to look at how they use their apps, how they use technology, how they make sure that these timetables are better indicated to support people.
Very briefly on that point, and it reminds me of a very important issue that was raised to me by East Kilbride Visually Impaired Bowling Club just the other week, who are reliant upon communications on the buses as well as those when buses are coming, and they were speaking about progress being made on talking buses so that when they're using the buses they know which stop to get off at and where they are in their journey. And I think in terms of the Honourable Member, he's making a fantastic point about communications, and if he would agree with me that that's extremely important for inclusion in public transport, that progress is made on these vital issues.
So I thank the Honourable Lady for her comments, and actually it's very important for accessibility as well. People with disabilities, I had people with disabilities speak to me about this and the concerns they have, because all the buses are accessible, but if the bus doesn't turn up or stops in a place which isn't accessible to get to, it exacerbates the issue. Now, I'm conscious of time, and I want to hear the Minister's response, so I will try and speed up through this to make sure that we arrive at the destination of the end of the adjournment debate before Christmas in a timely fashion. But what I would say is that, I know that the government is investing a lot in transport, so this isn't about necessarily being political or criticising solely. I'm aware that Hertfordshire County Council, I believe, had £29.7 million for the bus service improvement plan, which is great news. This was part of a £3 billion bus back better strategy. Allocation of funding has been broken up over the next 3 years across 5 towns, including Watford, which I'm very grateful for. Half in capital to invest in the buses themselves and half in revenue to invest in ticketing. Funding can also, I believe, be used in new services or enhancing current successful services. But I think I would argue the point that enhancing current successful services, we should also look at the ones that perhaps aren't so successful, ask why that's the case and see whether we need to support them more. And also realise that funding can't be used to subsidise services which are non-commercially viable or withdrawn. But again, if we know the reasons why they're not working, perhaps we could find ways to support them. And we've also had some recent successes too. The W19 which is mostly run commercially by Red Rose buses, was set to be withdrawn on the 26th of December. But this was opposed by Carpenter's Park Conservative County Councillors Rena Ranger and Chris Alley, District Councillors Rue Gruhl, Shanti Maru and David Coltman, working with myself. And after listening to views of residents, they submitted really great evidence to Hertfordshire County Council asking for it to save the W19 bus, and I'm really pleased to say that they agreed to increase funding fivefold to save the W19. The revised timetable is to be registered imminently, and the details will appear as soon as possible on the Instalink website. But the service, for any residents who might be listening, will be renumbered from the W19 to the 346 and 346A to denote the clockwise and anti-clockwise routings via Carpenter's Park respectively. I think the key point here, though, is that where you've got that engagement, you can have successes, and I think it's important that people are listened to. So I'll just start to round up. So again, I'm conscious of the Minister's time to respond, but on timetables, when we change timetables, when organisations change timetables, they have a major impact on actual bus users. What might be low user numbers on a spreadsheet could mean important routes for working people, hospital visits missed. It could mean people being late or their careers being impacted, not being able to pick up their kids on time. There's so many impacts. So I have several asks to the Minister. First of all, would the Minister consider implementing a legal requirement for all companies, commercial or public, who provide a public transport service to ensure local engagement before services are changed or cancelled? Would he highlight the importance of communication reliability of service? Overall, residents would be happy in some instances with a reduced but reliable service rather than regular cancellations and unannounced diversions. And would the Minister consider supporting the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency to increase availability of testing appointments for essential services such as the bus service and ambulance drivers to address the driver shortages, as we've seen there was when there were HGV shortages? And I know that very well because my father was a HGV driver, so it's a very noble profession. So finally, Mr Deputy Speaker, as I round up, I am very conscious that this is a debate for all areas, even though they can be very local issues. I'm very grateful for the Minister for staying late on this very final adjournment debate before Christmas. And so, as I am the last backbench MP to speak before Christmas, may I also just take a final moment to say thank you to all the staff, all the members across the House, to the Speaker's team, my own team with Tori, Abby, Michelle and Jane, all of the activists who work all year round to help put us in this place, and of course all of my amazing constituents for putting us into this place, and very finally to family and friends for what has been a challenging year for many, but hopefully we'll have a much more successful new year. Thank you.
Money on you being the last backbencher to speak, as Jim and Lisa are still here. Minister.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker, and it's a pleasure to take the last adjournment debate of this session. And I'd also like to thank honourable members, in addition to my honourable friends, the honourable members for Strangford, for East Kilbride, Strathaven and Lesmagow, Warrington South and Beckenham for their contributions today. And I'd like to congratulate the honourable member for, again, securing another opportunity to speak upon behalf of his constituents in Watford. I know he works relentlessly to champion the issues that matter to them, and that local bus services are part of that suite of issues that he regularly brings to this House and to ministers. I was fortunate enough to be able to visit Hertfordshire a couple of weeks ago, where I met Councillor Phil Bibby, the Executive Member for Highways and Transport, and experienced firsthand some of the great work going on within the county to improve bus services. I was delighted to see Arriva's new depot in Stevenage, which will house our new zero-emission bus fleet just up the road, and to learn more about the HeartsLink demand-responsive transport service, providing vital connectivity for those rural villages in the north of the county, admittedly away from my honourable member's constituency. These are things that can make a huge and positive difference in Hertfordshire and in elsewhere, and the government is clear that bus services are absolutely vital to ensuring people can access work work and education, as well as crucial services, like my honourable friend mentioned, such as healthcare. And we recognise the fundamental importance in ensuring that people can stay connected to their local communities as well. And I'd just like to address one of the issues straight up around late cancellations and poor communications from bus companies. I'm supportive of the general public being better informed about the changes to local bus services, and my department is working with local authorities to operate and operators to seek improvements in this. We recognise that challenges are being faced by the sector at the moment, but we do expect operators to provide the service that they have advertised, and it's unacceptable when they do not, and especially when they don't give proper notice of those changes. And that's one of the reasons I'm so keen to welcome the debate today, and ensuring that passengers who solely rely on bus services are easily able to provide their views to bus operators and local or transport authorities where changes to those services are due to be made. And it's a key aspect of the reforms to bus services in England that we set out in the National Bus Strategy. One of a plethora of measures we're currently bringing forwards, and crucially we want local authorities to really have greater oversight of bus service provision so they can work more closely with the bus operators and ensure the provision of bus networks that meet the needs of local people. And that also includes, Mr Deputy Speaker, an element of flexibility around bus service plans, because when things do change, then we need the operators to be able to change with them. And my department are ready and willing to work with local transport authorities and operators as they work together with those as part of their BSIP plan with enhanced partnerships, as I know that Hertfordshire County Council are looking forward to doing with the local operators. And I'm pleased that the honourable friend mentioned the £29.7 million that has already been allocated. The issue around consultation is particularly important, and I really do hope that those enhanced partnerships, we're going to see the operators working more closely with the service providers, are really going to help provide that. And I urge my honourable friend to keep pressing the council in that area and its operators. And the department has highlighted the importance in its guidance of both enhanced partnerships and BSIPs of councils and operators working with bus user groups and also local groups when considering how to improve services and making sure that passengers are well informed about changes to local bus routes, because there will always be changes and hopefully improvements, which is what these plans are there to deliver. We've also provided a capacity support grant to all local transport authorities to help develop and deliver their enhanced partnerships. In addition, we're providing capacity funding to those areas which didn't receive the full funding through BSIP to ensure that they can have better enhanced partnerships themselves. So whether or not they received the full large grant, or whether they're having that working relationship, we are there for them in my honourable friend's constituency and in the constituencies of other honourable members. And the department has also provided guidance and training for teams through the planned new bus centre of excellence. And the National Bus Strategy sets out a requirement for local transport authorities to create a new passenger charter, which I think is something my honourable friend would be very interested in as part of developing their BSIP. These charters are intended to give bus users the rights to receive certain standards of service, including punctuality, a proportion of services operated, information, and crucially redress, which is an issue that I know many honourable members across the House have started to raise with me since I've taken over this brief. And I hope that other councils hear this call for better communication, as well as my honourable friends. Regarding, in August we also have one of the issues we face is the recovery from COVID, and in August we did confirm that we continue to provide funding under the Bus Services Recovery Grant to help protect services until the end of March 2023, and we've also taken additional steps to prevent significant reductions to bus services. As a condition of receiving funding, bus operators are required to maintain a minimum service floor of 80% of pre-COVID levels, but we're also working to get those services back up and the ridership crucially back up to provide that long-term stability that people need. We know that driver shortages have been a major issue, and we are working with transport and industry bodies such as the Confederation of Passenger Transport, and recently held a summit on this particular issue, which I was delighted to attend. And it's things like that, and particularly working to really drive home things like the Thank You Driver campaign to help encourage people to take up really important opportunities that I'm really keen to continue to support. My honourable friend mentioned the DVSA, and I've already already prioritised tests for bus drivers to help speed up the process and provide us with valuable assistance in tackling some of these serious issues around driver shortages, and continue to ensure that is prioritised even as we're facing difficulties and strike action. And I know that Hertfordshire more broadly is in a process with a slightly different enhanced partnership. The Council's responsibility for the registration of bus services rather than the Office of the Transport Commissioner for Services. However, that statutory 42-day period is something which is particularly important, and I really hope that they can perhaps look at more enhanced ways of communicating with local people as they do that. In closing, I'd like again to congratulate my honourable friend. The BSIP is a major step forwards, but as is the £2 single fare, which we're introducing across the country before the House returns in January. So I look forward to that. There are undoubtedly challenges facing the sector, but we're committed to working with them to address these. And I look forward to engaging with colleagues across the House going forwards. Finally, Mr Deputy Speaker, I'd like to thank my team in the department, my team in Parliament and in North West Durham, the House staff, honourable members from all sides, and yourself ahead of the Christmas break, and wish all honourable members a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year in the days to come. Thank you.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order.